Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Academy Insider Podcast. Today I'm joined by midshipman second class Brayden Scharfe, and we're going to be talking all about professional knowledge. If you've heard this term prono, you may have heard your plebe say, hey, I have a prono quiz or a prono exam this week, or I have a come around tonight with my third class or second class, and you have no idea what that means, then check out this episode. Because again, on top of being a university with their academic course load, there is military professional development that needs to happen at the Naval Academy as well. So these professional knowledge exams are the way to build the base of knowledge in military themes and areas for the plebes and, again, for the rest of the midshipmen at the academy. And so if you're interested in learning about that professional development program, as well as specifically kind of as it relates to the life of a plebe, the prono exams and how it impacts future summer trainings, then check out this episode. If you know someone who may be interested in something like this or interested in topics about the Naval Academy, then subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast, because we will continue to put out content with a little bit of insight into the unique aspects that are being a midshipman at the Naval Academy and life at the Naval Academy. So if you're interested, again, please do that. Otherwise, I hope you really enjoyed the listen. Thank you so much and have a great day. The Academy Insider Podcast is sponsored by the Vermeer Group, a residential real estate company that serves the United States Naval Academy community and other select clientele in both California and Texas. If I can ever answer a real estate related question for you or connect you with a trusted Academy affiliated agent in the market which you're in, please reach out to me directly at grant@thevermeergroup.com. You can also reach out to me on my LinkedIn page, Grant Vermeer, and I'd be happy to respond to you there. Thank you so much. And now let's get back to the episode. All right. Hey, everyone, and welcome back to the Academy Insider Podcast. Brayden, thank you so much for being here with us today. Before we get started, if you don't mind just giving a quick introduction of yourself, where you're from, how you ended up at the Academy, and then a little bit about your midshipman self, your company, any activities you're in, etc.
Wonderful. Thank you, Grant. As stated, my name is Brayden Scharfe. I am from Virginia Beach, Virginia. I'm currently a second class, which is a junior at the Naval Academy. And let's see, I came to the Academy because of my community. It's a Navy-based community. The largest naval base in the world is in Norfolk, which is right nearby. And growing up there and seeing those people around me, plenty of neighbors or friends' dads were all in the military. I wasn't a military brat myself, that being of a military family of a direct parent is what military brat means, in case anyone doesn't know. And I saw those people around me, and I really looked up to that community. I wanted to give back ultimately. And additionally, my grandfather, he was a Naval Academy grad.
Okay.
So growing up with his stories, it inspired me to come here. He retired as a captain, and he was an EOD. So he spent 20 years doing some cool stuff and inspired me to pursue a career from him and the people around me.
Yeah.
So came here, loving it so far. 2 years and some change done right now. A year and some to go, and loving it. I'm a part of the combat arms team. So we're a shooting team that practice close quarter shooting or combat shooting. We're moving around while firing our pistols, rifles, or shotguns. Sometimes we'll shoot multiple guns at once and have our pistol in our holster and our rifle slung around our neck, shooting that until it goes dry, then grab our pistol, and all under behind cover or moving in between. And it's a lot of fun. I've learned a lot. I never shot really before coming here, so it's some valuable lessons about attention to detail or simply shooting in general.
Yeah.
Of course, being a part of a team where safety is paramount.
Sure. Sweet. A question for you. Do you guys compete for that? Like, are there competitions around that? Like, and who are your competition? Like, who do you go against for stuff like that?
That is a fantastic question. So it's training for combat roles in the fleet one day is main goal of the team. However, we do have competitions. So I actually just came back from Michigan this past weekend where we shot against Hillsdale College, a small Christian school up there that has a combat shooting team, and we shot a combat pistol match with them where we're moving around targets and shooting things as fast as we can and as accurate as we can.
Yeah.
That's how you win.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was a lot of fun. And then every year in the spring we have a tournament against the other service academies and big RTC units. They have their own version of our teams, and we go to 6 Hour Factory in New Hampshire where we have a big competition up there. And that's a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
It's a good time shooting against the other academies.
Yeah, I was about to say, do we have like a big rivalry against West Point in that factor too? Like, is your Sanders team? Is that like the kind of their version of combat arms? Do you have any idea? I feel like I've heard.
No, they have a separate Sandhurst team.
Okay.
The Sandhurst team, their main goal is just that working out and doing the specific training for the Sandhurst events. Okay. The combat arms team here and their combat weapons team is what they call it at West Point. They practice 3-gun shooting and maneuvering and speed and similar things that we do. Their main goal is shooting, and they work out on the side because a lot of these things require physical activity where we're having to do some kind of physical exercise right before shooting to simulate what it's like in combat.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do have a big rivalry with West Point every year. It's really close between us and West Point. Last year they got us, but this year we're gonna get them. I'll prove it to you next time.
I love it. I love it. Well, way cool. Thanks for being here and doing this. And again, the funny thing, as much as I'd love just to continue the discussion about the the combat teams here, the combat shooting team, but today's all about prono, and we're driving
Absolutely.
it back to plebes and talking about professional knowledge, aka prono, at the Naval Academy. And so, the first question, just kind of set the foundation for what we're talking about today, is what is prono, right? And so when a midshipman is talking about prono or professional knowledge to their parents or to their family, what are they talking about, and what are the topics that are kind of encompassed in this idea of prono?
That's a fantastic question, Grant. I heard about Prono before coming here, and I was like, that sounds weird. I don't know what that is, and it's strange. But Prono stands for professional knowledge. It refers to a structured program aimed at building foundational knowledge required for midshipmen at the academy. This is the professional knowledge to become an adequate naval or Marine Corps officer. So it's a program that focuses primarily for the plebes or the freshmen here,
Mhm.
the name for plebes, and includes weekly or biweekly now quizzes and verbal assessments on various military, Navy, and naval warfare, military customs, financial literacy, just a variety of topics that are important to be a good officer.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that one's always interesting because there is a wide variety of topics, right? And again, I'd be interested to hear as we talk about it is if the curriculum has changed at all. But again, a lot of it starts out, which is just like setting the foundation of Navy tradition and Naval Academy graduates, and going through some of our distinguished graduates. And you learned about the Wendy Lawrence, you learned about David Robinson, you learned about Roger Staubach and some of these people, right? But then, a couple weeks down the road, now you're learning about Marine Corps terminology. You're learning how far an M16, like the range of an M16 and the capabilities of tanks, etc. Right? There's a whole wide gambit that is involved in professional knowledge. That is really cool. And so, the question back to you is, as you're going through this, why do plebes do prono? As you mentioned, it's kind of hyper focused and on the plebes. What's the point? What's the purpose? Why are we doing this? Because as you mentioned, like, this is additional knowledge, additional studying, additional time that plebes have to spend learning information that's outside of their academic curriculum.
Absolutely, yeah, that's a good point. And the purpose is to immerse these plebes in the culture, the fleet, the things of the Marine Corps fleet that they'll be putting into and graduating, commissioning into one day.
Yep.
So yeah, these different chapters that we have, these bi-weekly exams are focused on a different chapter. And yeah, they can relate to anything specific like surface warfare community, the Marine Corps, or even niche communities like the special warfare community, such as Navy SEALs or EOD.
Mhm.
And it's really important because they want you to know as much as you do, like as much as you can before you go on these summer trainings. So every
Yes.
year at the academy, we have two blocks we have, our summer's divided into three blocks. Two of them have to be done with military training. That third one can be your time at home on leave. And those two other blocks you're spent developing as a midshipman to prepare you to become an officer, and those are spent as cruises. So like this past summer, I spent time on a DDG, which is a destroyer, DDG 85 out of Yokosuka, Japan. It was a fantastic experience, but what was really important was that I took Prono beforehand because I knew what the DDG was. I know what DDG stands for, a destroyer, and I learned everything about that ship. I knew it was a Flight 2A Alpha, which means that there's a hangar bay into it, that it's a newer generation than the Flight 1, but older than the Flight 3, and it has what capacity it has for its crew, where the different berthings are, the different parts of the ship. Someone says port, starboard, aft, forecastle. Those are all things that are important that you really ought to know, and this is what Prono teaches you. Not to mention the different rates in the Navy. So one thing that's part of the surface warfare chapter is knowing the Navy enlisted rates and ranks and all of the different parts that encompass the crew. If someone tells you that they're OS2, you should really know what that means, and that it really shows them that you care and want to be there, and are dedicated to becoming a good officer while you're at the academy. If you show that you know what that means,
Yeah.
so that's been really cool, and I think it's beneficial for that reason.
100%. I always thought, like, for me, again, it seems silly in the moment at times. Like, when you're a plebe, you're like, dude, why am I doing this? But then, like,
Mm-hmm.
you get out to a ship, right? And one of the things on the prono, like, knowledge base was, like, how to actually board a ship. Like, right, what is the proper procedure to go ahead and board a ship? Because, again, if you just, like, walk up there all willy-nilly, like, people are going to be like, dude, what are you doing? Right. And
Yeah, absolutely.
again, I think you mentioned it and you really hit the nail on the head, which I love, which is it just sets the foundation and gets you prepared to be able to like fully embrace and learn during your summer trainings, right? It allows you
Absolutely.
to have the knowledge base to be inquisitive, to be curious, to be asking intelligent questions, right? And really get to learn what you're doing in the fleet, right? Which I think is again just it's a really cool thing and it is important, right? Along the profession. Again, the academy, it's a university, 100%. You have these academic courses, but it's a military training institution. It is a military academy. And there is a level of knowledge on military aspects that you need to know and go through as well. And so, with that does it continue all 4 years? I know we mentioned that it's kind of the vast majority of the education is directed towards plebes, but does it continue all 4 years? And how does it change kind of between being a plebe versus being a third class, second class, or first class?
That is a great question because a lot of people don't understand that it doesn't really stop after your plebe year. And the main part of where the weekly quizzes or bi-weekly now, or the come arounds where you're having to meet with your upper class, if that's the sophomore, junior, or senior you're assigned to, that does stop. However, as an upper class, you still are required to have those meetings with your freshmen, and that's a good refresher. So that learning is always keeping you up to date and
Yep.
keeping you on top of your knowledge that you're retaining it.
Mhm.
But every semester, as an upper class, that being a sophomore or above, we have something called a PCA. PCA stands for the Professional Competency Assessment,
Mhm.
and it encompasses everything you learn from your fourth class, your plebe freshman year,
Yep.
and it adds everything every year. It adds some more stuff to it that goes a little bit more in depth. So this year, or this past last year, as a third class or a youngster
Mhm.
or a sophomore, there's a lot of different names of classes we have here. You had to learn more about the Marine Corps and the MOS and what specific MOS is meant to a tighter degree than just the overall first two numbers. You had to learn the first, the four numbers and what they were to different rates in the Marine Corps. And MOS which is the military occupation specialty of the Marine Corps, where you're designated as if you're an infantryman or if you're a logistics specialist or if you work with aviation, whatever you may do. And that's something I had to learn last year on top of what I learned about the Marine Corps the year before. So every semester, at the end of the semester, you'll take this PCA assessment as a sophomore and as a junior. Your senior year, you are done with your professional knowledge and you don't have to take it though, however. And yeah, this is used to ensure that midshipmen have the necessary knowledge, professional knowledge, competencies in their respective areas,
Yeah.
and continue for their future leadership as an officer.
100%. And you kind of mentioned that plebes take exams, or bi-weekly, and which we'll dive more into like the specific plebe curriculum here towards the end of this episode. But and you mentioned this idea of a come around where you're going and testing your knowledge throughout the week before you actually take the exam. Is that similar as an upperclassman? Not necessarily the full exams, but do you need to get, for lack of a better term, a checkout or a signature from a Marine on the yard when you're talking about the Marine Corps? Like, how does that work? And has it led to any really cool life and leadership discussions with some of the staff on the yard as a result of the professional knowledge?
Yes, we do have that. So as a second class or a third class, we have a set of an MQS is what we call it, Midshipman Qualification Standards, where you have to, based on this new knowledge, you have to get it signed by someone who is an expertise or a subject matter expert in those areas. So if it's talking about the different MOSs in the Marine Corps, you might have to go to a Marine enlisted or Marine officer and talk to them about these different MOSs. You might have to find someone in those MOSs to go talk to, and those can stem and start really cool stories. I've been able to talk to a drill sergeant who was also an infantry marine and talk to them about their time in their field, their time where they spent overseas in the Middle East. And that was really unique. And it brought up just me having to pursue them to find them to get their signature to prove that I actually know what this means. And they'd explain why it was important to them, why they take pride in their being an 0311, which is, the infantry MOS code. And what that means to them. So it showed you their passion and it showed you why it's really important as an officer to know those things because it's their passion. It's who they are. It's how they find their identity isn't part of those things. And that was really valuable. Also hearing their story.
Yeah, 100%. I think this is one of the really special things about professional knowledge at the academy, and it's something I talk on about in my opinion what makes the experience in Annapolis such a life-changing, generational changing opportunity is the access you have to these military, again, senior officers or senior enlisted leaders who have this real world experience. They have life experience, they have military leadership experience, and they share these stories. So you may go and bring this book and say, hey, can we talk about, like the range of an M16 or whatever it is? but it's going to lead to real life discussion. It's going to lead to leadership discussion, right? This MQS and this professional knowledge program at the Naval Academy fosters communication, fosters storytelling, and fosters mentor type relationships between midshipmen and the staff, right? Like, it's an incredible way and an incredible medium and avenue to having those conversations, right? And so I think from that aspect, it's just such a cool thing, right? Again, I probably, as great as the Naval Academy curriculum is, I probably learned more as a young man and leader through those conversations, right? Through the genuine mentorship and conversation that is a result of a lot of the professional knowledge aspects of the academy, right? And I have a lot of parents kind of reach out to me and they're like, how does my son or daughter find a mentor? Like, this is a great way to do it, right? Like, and I just want to let you know that the academy is fostering this. They're creating this environment where midshipmen can go to the senior enlisted staff, they can go to the senior officers and have these conversations and find someone that they resonate with, find someone that they kind of want to emulate and continue those conversations, right? And so it's super cool from that perspective. But I do want to switch back a little bit to, how it impacts a plebe in the day-to-day life of being a plebe, because this is such, a heavy demand on time from time to time. You mentioned this term come around. What is a come around? And when it comes to that plebe, how does it change between, a come around with a third class versus a come around with a second class or a first class? Do you mind kind of walking us through the process of what come arounds are?
Yes. So come arounds are weekly meetings. Even if it's a bi-weekly exam, it
Yep.
only happens every 2 weeks. We have to have weekly meetings with our underclass. So tonight I'm meeting with my plebe, Miss Golden. She is a freshman at Naval Academy, and we will be talking through the next chapter.
Yep.
This next chapter is another part of surface warfare, and we will be going through the intricacies of that chapter and the details and what's really what I highlight as, these are some really important things. This is what I've experienced from my time in the summers. This is my time on this ship. Like, this is why it's important to know these different types of ships, or these are just different questions that you can, like, from your knowledge here, this is how you go from point A to point B, is like, you ask those in-depth questions based on that basic knowledge you already have. It can make it more valuable experience, as we talked about earlier. So yeah, we'll go through that. And like the first week, since it's bi-weekly now, I'll kind of really go deep into that with her and talk with her through the content. And that second week now, I use the quizzer. We'll talk about these different questions, and I really try to get really deep and quiz her hard, and sometimes up to an hour worth of time, generally around 30 minutes though, so that by the time she gets to her senior, her first class, midshipman, that she knows all the information. And that's like a check. The second class are really tasked with making sure they know the knowledge and teaching them that knowledge. And the third class, their youngster, who they meet with before, they have to meet them in order. So they have to meet with their sophomore, and then their junior, and then their senior every week.
Yep.
And they have to meet them with that order. So the sophomore really should be introducing things and is more of an emotional and a day-to-day just like checkup. How are you? Like, how's your plebe year going? How's these things, these struggles? I was there just a couple months ago myself. Like, they're supposed to be that first empathizer that can relate to them and help them out with different things. That's academics, if that's prono. They can give them tips for studying. They can go into the chapter some as well. I remember doing that and talking about just, I came from ProTrimid, which is a summer experience where you experience submarines, surface warfare, aviation, and Marines all in like a 4-week span. You spend a week at each one, and you learn about the communities. And during my, come around as a youngster, when I was a sophomore at the academy, I would be with my plebe. I would just talk about those experiences and why prono was important with them. Then now, like, I'm testing that knowledge. The next year, I'll be checking that knowledge. That's kind of how that rolls around.
Yeah.
And you have to schedule those ahead of time. So like, my plebe schedules them on Sunday night and gets the whole week planned ahead. So she texts me Sunday, like, hey, can we meet Wednesday night at 8 o'clock or 2000 in our terms? I was like, sure, sounds great.
Yeah. No, I love that. You did a great job recapping that again. That third class one is that first initial mentorship, right? You're kind of talking about what things they should be focusing on, kind of sharing some stories, just getting them prepared and guided. That second class is really a big check, right? Like, you're kind of teaching them, instructing them, and doing that check before, they go and have that come around with the first class, which is really like that last step to make sure, like, okay, yeah, you're prepared and ready to take the exam, right? The actual exam or quiz for the week. And so with that is, when are these exams? I know you mentioned that they've become kind of a bi-weekly, every 2-week type thing, but what days are they on? What are the exams like? And how are they administered? What does a prono exam look like?
Great question. And foremost, I want to recognize like the reason that they are biweekly now is that they've condensed some of the chapters
Mhm.
and they are bigger than they used to be.
Sure.
So that's why they're giving you a 2 week period to really get into that chapter and deeper. And also, I think the 2 week period helps you reemphasize things and learn them
Mhm.
more like to a greater degree, not just kind of brain dump, but really have to know the knowledge. So that's been beneficial. And they take these exams on that Sunday of the second week. So they have a full 2 weeks, and that Sunday they'll take the exams at 1900, so 7 o'clock at night, and they'll all get in the hallway. We call them B-ways. They'll get in the
Mhm.
hallway, face the wall, and then on their computers will log in, take a Google form, and take the test. The test is generally consists of multiple choice and fill in the blank, and sometimes free response. But more recently, I've been doing to just multiple choice, which is very fortunate for the current plebes. I had to do a lot more fill in the blank back in my day, but who knows? It changes all the time. And they're corrected automatically. They're graded automatically
Okay.
from the Google form, and then any question that's wrong, the upper class will generally go in, or the ones who administer the exam will go in and check what they got wrong and see if it was a spelling error. Like if the spelling will generally give them the points,
Sure.
unless it was egregious, and otherwise, they'll get it wrong. And on top of that, the person who makes the exams is generally an upper class of the entire brigade, so the entire body of student body.
Mhm.
There's one person who is the brigade trainer, is what we call them. They're in charge of developing these tests and administering them to the entire brigade. So
Sure.
they and their subordinates will develop and create this test.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. 100%. Man. First of all, it just continue doing these interviews just keeps making me feel old, man. Because we were, yeah. I mean, that makes sense to do it on a Google form, right? Like, what an efficient way to do it. When I was a plebe, man, we were taking it like handwritten. They print out the pieces of paper, we'd write on the pen, and that made it a little bit easier, especially when it came to spelling errors. You like scribble a little bit, and be like, yeah, no, I was trying to write Robinson. You're like that. I don't know about that, but maybe. All right, half credit. But yeah, no, again, there is, especially for my varsity athletes out there too. Again, obviously, I'm kind of speaking from my experience as a basketball player. Like we would play on Saturdays, right? Like Saturday night road game at Lehigh or at Lafayette. We're in Pennsylvania. We're coming back, and you have that prono exam on Sunday. And so, like my bus ride home, I just have like such concrete memories of like sitting and studying and reading your pro notebook on that bus ride home to prepare for that exam, to take care of your prono. And so it is such a kind of an iconic and foundational piece of the plebe experience. So it's interesting. Now, with that being said, this is the Naval Academy and you need to do well. So the question is, what happens if you don't do well? Like, what are the standards when it comes to prono? What kind of scores are expected of the midshipmen? And what are either the remediation or kind of, again, the path back to being sat on prono if they don't go well? Like, kind of what is that process if someone, fails a quiz? And how do we kind of get back on track from there?
Yeah, so foremost, I want to say, yeah, there is a lot of demands here. We have a lot of mandatory trainings or just a lot of classes. Most plebes, most freshmen are taking 18, 17, upwards of 19 credits, and that's a lot on top of all their other business and craziness they have going on, even especially with their athletics or what it might be, morning workouts. And so it's a lot. It can be hard. I remember having to squeeze things. Like if I would get to a class early, I would just sit down, pull up my pro notebook, and start studying or just reading through the chapter. I would read through the chapter couple times, like maybe like 5 times every chapter, just so I could really understand like the conversational knowledge and the stuff I need to memorize. I would start memorizing,
Yeah.
and that was beneficial. Just and that's something we as upper class make our plebes do is we make them carry their prono books around with them everywhere, so that they just have no excuse not to open it up. And why I hated carrying my book around everywhere, it proved to be really beneficial because I had no excuse not to just open it up when I had some time before a brief started or before class started or wherever it may be. So that was great. But now, so yeah, let's say I don't get that time in, or I just totally didn't see a page or something, I forget,
Sure.
and I did poorly on a test. To pass, you need a 70. That is
Mhm.
pretty. It seems pretty low, but that's majority of the content, and that shows that you know a lot of it, but not all of it. And it's not just a check in the box. Like we still don't want to see a 70. We want to know that you're really dedicated to learning this stuff and
Mhm.
are trying to become the best officer that you can be upon commissioning. So we still kind of flag that as that's not something we really want to do. So we have something called a company pass, a battalion pass, and a brigade pass. So brigade pass is like a 70%.
Mhm.
A battalion pass is 80, and then a company pass is 90%. So if you get a 90 or above, you're pretty much good to go,
Yeah.
and no worries there. If you go to battalions, so anywhere from 80 to 90%, we want to have an extra come around with you so that you know this next chapter a little bit more,
Hmm.
and that's really about it. We just want to take a little bit more time. But if you just get a 70%, maybe two more come arounds, a little bit more time, just kind of there's that linear trend where it's more time based on the lower score you got.
Hmm.
But that last time, if you fail, you're gonna have to meet with several different people beyond just your chain of command. We call it, the fire team, beyond just your squad leader, your senior, sophomore, and junior.
Yeah.
Besides just meeting with them, you have to meet with your platoon commander, which is another first. Yeah, it's a higher rank that
Yeah.
has a lot more people underneath them. You're gonna have to meet with your battalion sergeant or your battalion like XO commander, whatever it may be, different people that you're gonna have to start meeting with, and they're gonna have a lot harder come arounds, or they might be doing, all right, every question you get wrong, you're gonna do 3 push-ups with me. We're gonna do them together, and like
Yeah.
that's kind of annoying, and that's hard sometimes. You'll be doing, if you don't know your stuff, you'll be doing a lot of push-ups, and that's just to teach you like this stuff is really important, and we really care about it, so we want you to as well. So those are some of the things, and if you do fail multiple times, like if you failed one time, they're just gonna make sure you're back on top for the next time. If you keep showing a pattern of failing, that's when they'll put you up for an aptitude board, and that shows that like maybe you don't really have this priority in the right place. Yes, school is important. Professional knowledge and becoming a good officer is why we're here to like a hard degree. Like we're here to learn, but we're here to commission ultimately. So this stuff is like really just as important in some ways. And if you show you don't really care, and that's reflected on your scores that are consistently below like 40%, 50%, 60%, whatever it may be, then you'll be put up for a review board behind your company for your company officer, an O3, a lieutenant or a captain, a lieutenant in the Navy or a captain in the Marine Corps to kind of talk to you about like, all right, what's going on? How do we fix this? Because this is not acceptable.
Yep.
That's when it gets to a serious issue.
Sure. But like you're saying, there are so many steps between that point, right? Like you're saying, and the amount of involvement from midshipmen all over helping you, not arrive at that point, right?
Yeah.
And again, it's really interesting. I don't know if you've heard or anyone listening has heard Admiral McRaven's speech that he gave at the University of Texas, the commencement speech. It's all about where the book like Make Your Bed comes from. But he shares a story of, a couple of guys going through buds who are having a hard time and they're not meeting the physical like fitness requirements. They're not doing enough pull-ups, they're not doing enough push-ups. So as a result, right, they have to do more, right? They have like additional training that the rest of the guys who are going through buds and kind of meeting a certain level are doing. But over time, they started becoming the ones who were like exceeding and excelling and kind of leading the pack on the fitness side because they were putting in that extra work. And again, that's where those things mentioned, right? Like if you get an 85, yeah, now you're not just doing a come around with the person, your fire team leader, your squad leader, etc. Now you have someone from the company level staff that's doing it. And then again, same thing. If you fail at the battalion level, you get a 75. Like, yeah, now you have a battalion staff member doing an additional come around with you. And that's not fun because it takes extra time and it's stuff that the rest of your company mates are not doing. But it's just getting you prepared and giving you the extra investment and involvement to make sure that you're getting back on the right track. Right. And so, but it's still not fun. but it's still not fun. So, but yes, again, what I would just encourage as people are listening is that like if they have a rough week, it's not the end of the world, right? It's not the end of the world, and there are plenty of resources and systems in place to make sure that the plebes are, being taken care of and getting the extra assistance that they need to start excelling with it. But as we kind of wrap up here, I do just want to shift now to, again, if you have any stories or anything you remember from either your summer training or this process as like going through Prono, a specific conversation with a staff member that really kind of was memorable or special to you, just to kind of highlight again what makes professional knowledge at the Naval Academy a really special program.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's what's something unique about the academy is just that summer training idea. Like a lot of other schools or commission programs, you get exposure. You might have a little bit of time in the summer to go learn about different communities, but the Naval Academy you have a lot of time, and you dedicate a lot of your time here and in your summer to that. So I remember just going through, Prono and having my upper class just talk about their experiences being on a nuclear submarine with nuclear weapons
Mm-hmm.
for days on end and what that was like. And I just remember that being super intriguing. Like, this is why it's important because these are the people you're going to be talking to. This is the mission you have at hand. You're in the, you're protecting the national security, or like you're protecting the world with just having that threat, like those weapons out there. And like that was very intriguing and just inspiring to me in some ways, just hearing those stories. But or just like I remember, just funny acronyms. There's a lot of different things where you have to memorize different parts of national security strategy, for
Yep.
instance, and you know you just create something funny to remember it. And like those are a lot of the parts where it's like there's a lot of stuff you have to memorize, a lot of things that are hard, and like the funny acronyms is what got me through it, and I would always be thinking of that every summer. Yeah, like something I did that was super cool. Two different summer experiences that I really stand out was that were unique to me. I had like every year going into your junior year, you have to spend time on cruise. It's either a surface cruise on a ship on top of the water or a subsurface cruise, so on a submarine.
Yeah.
I chose to do on a surface cruise, and I was fortunate enough to get the location of Japan. Originally, I thought I was just going to go to Japan and maybe be on a ship a little bit and then be on the shore the rest of the time. But actually, I flew into South Korea,
Ooh.
and I got on a ship there and I was able to go to Japan after.
Yeah.
We took some days in between, and we had a really cool experience being underway, going from South Korea to Japan,
Yeah.
and just be able to experience different cultures and be able to experience the ship on like the life on a ship, and 7 days underway. Like it was really really unique experience, and from what I learned, like knowing all the professional knowledge about the DDG 80
Mhm.
and the GD85, the flight 2 I was on, or like knowing how to interact with the crew or like what the crew did and their backgrounds and based on just their job title, the different components of a ship, the different how the ship is laid out with a captain versus the divos, the department heads, and what all those different roles meant and what it entailed. The lead petty officer, the chief petty officer, or whatever it may be, the command master chief, knowing all their roles, and that was really cool. And so like that was an awesome experience.
So sweet.
Another one, what
Oh,
was
so
that?
keep going. I was like, it's so sweet, right? Like that. It's
Yeah,
so
it's
cool.
so sweet.
Oh my gosh.
Or yeah, just when you get to, I got to Yokosuka Naval Base, which is a huge naval base in Japan, and I saw a ton of different ships where I was able to identify them and know what their missions were. If that was amphibious ships, if that was aircraft carriers, if that was cruiser, like whatever it may be, and like you could tell like, oh, the ship's meant for this type of warfare, anti-submarine warfare, or this meant is this, the carrier air wing is on that ship, and it's really cool just being able to identify that and experience it. It makes it a lot more exciting when you know those are more than just ships and like what they're used for. Or just when you're on the ship, you can understand their defense system. Like this is the Aegis defense system. Like I know exactly what this does, how it attacks, and the different missiles. Like there's got to be SM2, SM3 missiles, yeah, whatever it may be, SM6 inside the ship right now, and that's
Yeah.
really cool to think about and see. And so yeah, another experience I had was after my plebe year, I did a 2 week exercise with the Marines in Mountain Warfare Training Center, where they taught us so much about how to live in a wilderness and environment and move people across terrain. And we learned stuff about land navigation, which we briefly go over in professional knowledge, or
Yeah.
we talk about just like the Marine Corps and the essence of getting down to gritty and like what these different like roles are. Like we worked with people in the infantry, we worked with the recon Marines, with MARSOC Marines, and they were all there, and like they show us what like these different skills that they have and they learn. So being able to read about that stuff and then see them out there with their skills, their weapons, and understand the complexities that go into it, like it's really eye opening. It just makes it really awesome. Like it's just super cool.
Yeah.
It's like when sometimes it's like when you like read a good book and then you see the movie and the movie's just like the book but even better. Like that never really happens really, if I'm being honest. But like it's just kind of like that. You get to see it and like you read it, which is good, but then like
Yeah.
sometimes watching it and seeing it unfold is like
Yeah.
this is awesome. Like the excitement you get.
100%. Yeah. Now, summer training at the academy is incredible for that. Like, it gives you so many eye-opening things. Like for me, I've had a wild hair. I was like, oh man, maybe I could be a Marine. And then I had to go sleep in a field for a week, and I was like, no, no, I'm not built for this. I'm a little too bougie for that. Put me on a ship or something, man. But no, yeah, I couldn't agree more, right? And I think again, just really doubling down on the fact of professional knowledge at the Naval Academy is the best way to set the foundation for midshipmen to be smart enough to ask questions, to be curious, to be inquisitive during their time during summer training to get the most out of the experience, to relate, to be able to ask, like you were saying earlier, to be able to ask the OS2 about his systems, to ask him about his equipment, to ask him about his life. So that way you get a really good experience while you're out to sea and get a good sense of what life in that community may be like, right? Because again, these are big decisions. Like these are the eye-opening pieces that will kind of be the building blocks that make you submit your preference for service selection, right? Like they may be the game-changing things that say like, no, yeah, like I do want to be a Marine, or I do want to be a surface warfare officer, or I do want to be a submariner, right? And again, all of this it's part of the process, right? It's part of the process and way cool. So Brayden, thanks so much for taking the time to be here with us today and talk about the professional knowledge program, the ProKnow stuff at the Academy. Final thing before we wrap up is something I ask everyone who comes on the show, which is one, like, how has your experience in the Naval Academy been? And what would you say to the young men or women, the high school students out there that may be interested in the Academy about why they should consider a service academy education?
Foremost, I love it here. It challenges me and it pushes me to be greater, but the experiences you have here are just phenomenal and unmatched. Like the fact that there are so many officers here, some people with great wisdom and experience that are just at your fingertips is remarkable. And that's something that the Academy offers that's very unique to the Naval Academy or even West Point or Air Force. Like they all have a plethora of just wisdom, experience, and knowledge that you can tap into just by conversations. That's the key aspect of mentorship we have here, which I find so special. So I have plenty of different mentors, if that's my company officer, or if that's some teachers I've had, or just people I've happened to interact with. And then I get their email and I've emailed them and met with them a couple times, asked about their career, and they pour into me because they want me to become the best I can be, and that's just so special. I think ROTC is a great opportunity as well, like the Reserve Officer Training Corps that you can do for the different services, but you don't have the same resources like you do here in terms of just like the sheer amount of officers. So that's something I find really special to the Academy, and a reason I would say pursue a service academy. It really offers that opportunity for that mentorship just right here at your fingertips.
Yeah.
I think last week I was meeting with one of my Marine mentors who was one of my teachers. I just talked to him just a little bit more about his career. He's got promoted to major. And, I was just like, sir, like, this is a big milestone. Tell me about why you decided to stay in after all this time, like, and why you're going back to the fleet. Like, what's really your draw? And just having those conversations is something that's really important and helps you decide, like, what you want to do and what to pursue.
Yeah.
So that's one reason about the service academies. But in terms of like my time here, yeah, I really enjoy it. Like there's definitely some times where it's hard with school and the demands, the mandatory football games, can't go home for different things, or you don't have much time at home for breaks, summers, whatever it may be. But the experiences you'll have and the friendships you'll make are limitless. We talk about every Friday night. I feel like I'm always doing stuff with my friends. It started plebe year when we were locked in. You couldn't leave on a Friday night, so you play games. Like if that's games out in the field playing football, or if that's card games, whatever it may be. And then it just kept going. Like as a junior, I had Fridays off, but almost every Friday, so my guys and I in my company will go out and like just have some food, a couple beers downtown, just like not like just hanging out, and like just because we had that repetition, and that's something that's super cool here is like you just get these super tight bonds and friends like no other.
Yeah. 100%. I'm glad you brought that up. I feel like it's something I actually don't touch on enough on here, which is, again, I talk about all the incredible things about the Academy, like you're saying, but friends, right? Like you make incredible friends here, right? Like it is tough. This experience is really hard, but as a result, because of all that, like the friendships that you build here to this day, even as an old guy now, like my best friends are still my company mates, right? They're my roommates from the Academy. They're all the like, a lot of people go throughout life like not feeling that bond, not feeling a sense of friendship. And like, again, when you come to the Academy, like you're going to have friends, like real friends for life, right? And I think that's a really cool aspect. So I appreciate you sharing that. I appreciate you talking about your experience and everything prono at the Academy. I know you probably a little bit of the voluntold to come on here and share the wisdom about professional knowledge. So I appreciate you and your time and stealing probably a free period from you. But I'm really grateful. And I just want to say thank you for taking the time to be here with us today.
Absolutely, Grant. Thank you for having me.
All
Really
right.
appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. And the Academy Insider audience, thank you so much for listening. And please let me know if you ever have any questions. Thanks. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Academy Insider podcast. I really hope you liked it, enjoyed it, and learned something during this time. If you did, please feel free to like and subscribe or leave a comment about the episode. We really appreciate to hear your feedback about everything and continue to make Academy Insider an amazing service that guides, serves, and supports midshipmen, future midshipmen, and their families. Thank you.